Minister Alan Kelly's office. I'm sure the minister's delighted, not doing it outside his home. But this is in support of water charge protesters who are now apparently on hunger strike because they've been transferred from Mountjoy to Wheatfield Prison. I'm joined by the Independent TD for Tipperary South, Seamus Healy. Seamus Healy, welcome to the programme.
Evening, George.
Deputy Healy, this is an issue of contempt of court. These protesters only just have to say, we will obey the court order, and they could walk out of prison today. Is that not so?
Well, the position, of course, is that these protesters are in prison for opposing and taking issue with a very undemocratic decision by the government over the last period of time.
No, that's not why they're in prison, Deputy. No, you're an elected representative. You know the importance of being correct. They're in prison because they broke the law by a judge in an Irish court. Well, that's why they're in prison.
I'm very clear, George, that the regulation that you should be 20 metres from these meter installers is completely ridiculous and unfair. And in fact, if it was operated in Tipperary, where we opposed the installation of these meters, then hundreds of us would be in prison today. And I believe that this is a process of criminalisation of water protesters and indeed these particular men. And I believe that that process, which meant the transfer of them from Mountjoy to Wheatfield, should be reversed immediately, and they should be transferred back to Mountjoy, and indeed they should be released. You have to remember that the introduction of water charges is an issue on which the government has absolutely no mandate. They didn't stand on this issue in support of water charges in the last general election, and in particular, Minister Alan Kelly, whose office we're going to be outside tonight, went around Tipperary telling people to vote for him so as he could stop Fine Gael introducing these charges. It's an issue of democracy.
Right, okay. Well, I have acquaint views on democracy, given that you believe that it's okay to break the law and that we should all be protesting in the streets to lawbreakers.
Well,
but you're just looking. I mean, what this is now is just looking for martyrdom, and this would be ideal. The more martyrs this protest has, the better. And these are 5 men who broke the law, went to jail. They have a simple way of walking out the gate. They could be out the gate in an hour by simply saying, we will abide by the order. Like, just because you as an independent TD think 20 metres is too little or too much has bugger all to do with it. It's the law, 20 metres. So why don't you as an elected representative go out and say, why don't we abide by the law?
Well, I think this particular law is an ass, George, to be quite honest with you. And I think very, very many other people think the same. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, as I said, that what's been done is anti-democratic. It's completely the reverse of the mandate that the government parties got in the last general election. It's an attempt to make ordinary people pay for a recession that they had no hand, act or part in creating. These men are simply standing up for themselves, standing up for their families and standing up for their communities. And I believe that what we're seeing now is a process of criminalisation of those men, and it should stop and stop now. And the government and the Minister Kelly can do that.
All right, but hold on a while, Deputy. How many of the 4 million odd people who live on this island had hand, act or part in the recession? I mean, the entire citizenry...
Well, the problem is...
the entire citizenry is innocent of putting this country into recession. But it's an unfortunate thing, as the Greeks are going to find out, that unfortunately you do have to pay for it. Somebody does.
Well, the problem,
you just want nobody to pay.
Well, no, the problem, George, is that a very small percentage of the population of this country put the country into recession, and the situation is that those very same people who put the country into recession, the 1% or the 2% of the population who did that, have been rewarded during this recession. Their income has increased, their assets have increased, while the 90% of people and more who had no hand, act or part in it are suffering during the course of this recession. And that simply has to stop. And these men, as I said, are standing up for themselves and their families, and they're in fact standing up for democracy.
Sorry, as a matter of fact, not your mistake, mine. I made a mistake. Of course, there is also a woman in prison, and that was my mistake, and I apologise for that. The issue, though, here is there are 130,000 children living in poverty in Ireland. We have no vigils for them. Hundreds of families are homeless. We have no vigils for them. We have people dying in doorways outside Dáil and we don't have vigils for them.
No, George, you're quite wrong about that, because this vigil is for those people, and that's what these men are standing up for. They're standing up opposing austerity, and austerity has produced a situation where we have 130,000 children living in poverty, where the poverty rate has doubled over the last number of years, but where at the same time, very wealthy people in this country have made money out of the recession and have increased their income and their assets during the course of that period, and are simply not paying their fair share. So what I believe is, and I think is quite clear, that over the last number of months, that the whole issue of water is a sparking point for anti-austerity and for people who are at last saying to themselves, we simply can't continue to live this way. As a lady said to me the other day, she said, Seamus, we're not living, we're existing. And that, unfortunately, is the situation for very, very many people in this country. And these men and the lady who is in prison, they're standing up for themselves, their families and their communities. And I think they should certainly be released. And as an immediate step, they should be transferred back to Mountjoy near their families, and to a situation where people in the past, like, for instance, Deputy Joe Higgins, who was in jail, were imprisoned in the training unit rather than in Wheatfield or any other prison.
All right, thank you for joining me. Deputy Seamus Healy there, Independent TD, for Tipperary South.